I now call to order the regular session meeting of the Board of Commissioners of the City of Tarpon Springs on Tuesday, October 6, 2015 at 6:30. Roll call.
Mayor Archie.
Here.
Vice Mayor Larson.
Here.
Commissioner Tarpon.
Here.
Commissioner Banther.
Here.
Commissioner Sieber.
Here.
Tonight's invocation will be given by Reverend Kurt Snare of St. Timothy Lutheran Church. Will everyone stand? Please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance following.
The Lord be with you. Gracious Heavenly Lord, we give you thanks for all that you are. We give you thanks for this privilege to live in this beautiful town that you have made. May you make of us good stewards. May you give wisdom and counsel to those who are called to lead. May you bless our citizens. We ask all of this in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We will now go to public comments on any item that will not be discussed this evening. Seeing none, we'll go to proclamations. Item number 1 is Community Planning Month. This proclamation reads, whereas change is constant and affects all cities, towns, suburbs, counties, boroughs, townships, rural areas, and other places, and whereas community planning and plans can help manage this change in a way that provides better choices for how people work and live, whereas community planning provides an opportunity for all residents to be meaningfully involved in making choices that determine the future of their community, and whereas the full benefits of planning requires public officials and citizens who understand and support and demand excellence in planning and plan implementations, whereas the month of October is designated as National Community Planning Month throughout the United States of America and its territories, and whereas the American Planning Association is a professional institute, the American Institute of Certified Planners endorsed National Community Planning Month as an opportunity to highlight the contributions sound planning and plan implementation make to the quality of our settlements and environment, and whereas the celebration of National Community Planning Month gives us the opportunity to publicly recognize the participation and dedication of the members of planning commissions and other citizen planners who have contributed their time and expertise to the improvement of the city of Tarpon Springs, whereas we recognize the many valuable contributions by professional community planners and regional planners to the city of Tarpon Springs, and extend our heartfelt thanks for the continued commitment to public service by these professionals. Now, therefore, I, David Arch, by virtue of authority vested in me as the mayor of the city of Tarpon Springs, do hereby proclaim the month of October 2015 as Community Planning Month. I'm not sure if you want to say anything.
I just want to thank the mayor and the commission for recognizing planning and the good works that planning has done in this community going forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Item number 2 is Fire Prevention Month. And this proclamation reads, whereas fire is a serious public safety concern both locally and nationally, and homes are the location where people are at the greatest risk from fire, and whereas according to the National Fire Protection Agency, in 2013, fire departments in the United States responded to 369,500 home structure fires, and these fires caused 2,755 deaths, 12,200 severe injuries, and $7 billion in direct damage. And whereas cooking is the leading cause of home fires in the United States, and whereas unattended equipment was a factor in 1/3 of the reported cooking fires, and whereas 57% of reported non-fatal home cooking fire injuries occurred when the victims tried to fight the fire themselves. And whereas Tarpon Springs first responders are dedicated to reducing the occurrence of home fires through fire prevention and protection and education, and whereas the 2015 Fire Prevention Month theme, Hear the Beep Where You Sleep, every bedroom needs a working smoke alarm, effectively serves to remind us to stay alert, ensure you have a smoke alarms in your home, check your smoke alarms monthly. Now, therefore, I, David O. Archie, by virtue of authority vested in me as mayor of the city of Tarpon Springs, do hereby proclaim the month of October as Fire Prevention Month and urge the people of Tarpon Springs to take action by checking the homes for working smoke detectors, replacing non-functioning ones, checking them monthly throughout the year, not just during Fire Prevention Month, and to support the many safety activities and efforts of the Tarpon Springs Fire Rescue and the men of the fire department.
I'd like to thank the Mayor and Commissioners for taking the time to recognize fire safety and fire prevention. This is the time for everybody at home to check your fire alarms, as we call them now. Smoke detectors are now smoke alarms. Everybody check them. If you have a problem or question, just get a hold of us, phone, Facebook, email, it doesn't matter, but we're there. Just give us a call. We'll help. Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 3 is the proclamation for Breast Cancer Awareness Month. This proclamation reads, City of Tarpon Springs, Florida, whereas this year more than 230,000 women and 2,000 men will be diagnosed with breast cancer in America. Whereas the heartache and pain of this disease will touch too many of our mothers, fathers, daughters, and sisters, and too many families will bear these burdens. And whereas during National Breast Cancer Awareness Month, we recognize all those who know the anguish of breast cancer, and we redouble our efforts to improve care and bring attention to this disease. Whereas many breast cancer is caught early, treatment works best, and survival rates increase. That is why all women and men should be familiar with the risk factors and symptoms of this disease. Whereas today more Americans are surviving breast cancer than ever before, and whereas this month, as we honor those lost to breast cancer, let us join with the loved ones who celebrated their memory and the patients who battle this disease every day, as well as our nation's advocates, medical researchers, and healthcare providers. Together, we renew our commitment to better prevent, detect, and treat breast cancer, and we continue our work towards a future free from cancer in all its forms. Now, therefore, I, David Archie, by virtue of authority vested in me as the mayor of the city of Tarpon Springs, do proclaim the month of October 2015 as National Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And we will be mailing this proclamation. Are there any public comments on any of those proclamations? Seeing none, we'll go to presentations. And the first one is item number 4, Charter Review Board, and this will be presented by the chair of that board, Frank Diodonato.
Good evening, Commissioners. Basically, we met for approximately a year and a half, and we went completely through the charter. Most of it was grammatical. Sections 3, Section 16, and Section 27 were indeed all grammatical. And Section 33 regarding the hospital, because of the name change, we just simply changed Helen Ellis to North Florida, Florida Hospital in North Pinellas. So it was a fairly straightforward year. I thank the Commission for the privilege of serving, and I especially want to thank the members, any of the members here in the audience. That I see Anita back there. Maybe you should stand, any of you on the Charter Review that are here. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure serving, and I'm here if you have any questions. Oh, Dan, I saw Dan down there. Yes. Any questions?
I don't have any questions, but I would thank you, all of those Charter Review members, for what sometimes is taken lightly, but is an important part of what we do, because the charter is what actually governs this city. So we thank you for your hard work in reviewing this and even some of the suggestions that have been made, even though most of them are just wordsmithing. So I just want to thank you. I don't know if any of the commissioners have any comments. Any public comments on this item?
Again, thank you very much.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, do we need to do anything for accepting this?
No, just the timeline. The Board of Commissioners has 30 days in case they have any changes. And then the first reading in final form will be is scheduled for November 17th, and the second reading is scheduled on December 1st. And then the language would go on the resolution for the ballot, which will come out on December 15th.
All right. Thank you. We'll now go to our consent agenda, and I think one item has been deferred, that's 6B. Are there any items that anyone would like further information on or discussion? Vice Mayor?
I had a question on number 8.
Go ahead.
This is the Jolly Trolley Service Agreement. I was just wondering if we've received statistical information in terms of ridership and usage and so forth.
We received that. I think we'll be getting, within the month we'll be getting our update and stuff, but we will be getting that, and I'll make sure we get it to you.
Because I know some years they come and give a
I think
presentation.
I think usually in October, early November, they'll come make the presentation on it.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay.
Commissioner.
I also had a question on number 8. I was looking at the funding, and I guess there's no one here from Jolly Trolley, but looking at what 3 of our cities fund, $33,963, as opposed to Clearwater downtown and the city of Clearwater, I was a little surprised that only 4% and 2% are being received from those areas. My other concern, and I take the Jolly Trolley every once in a while, and especially during season when I have visitors here, they've changed the routes from what it originally was, kind of a straightforward route on alternate 19, and now are doing these detours around each city and to downtown, and it takes almost 2 hours to get from here to Clearwater Beach. So my question to them is there any way they can expedite even the wait at Island Estates, or maybe cut out some of that routing, because no one wants to be on a bus for 4 hours that's going to the beach, especially our visitors.
Yeah, we can work with them on all that. All that's available to meet with them and do so.
Okay, thank you.
And the funding part, it's been a while, and maybe some of the rest of y'all remember, I think Clearwater, the Jolly Trolley pays so much for that initial route, and so theirs
That's why
was a
their
little
amount
less.
is reduced now. Okay. That's quite a difference from what we pay.
Yeah, but in the whole circumstance, I think it's fair.
Okay.
Any public comments on this item? Chair will entertain a motion.
Move to approve consent agenda. Second.
Roll call.
Commissioner Sieber,
Yes.
Commissioner Banther?
Yes.
Commissioner Terrapini?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Larson?
Yes.
Mayor Archie?
Yes. Item number 15 is renew file number 120122-N-JJ, maintenance of public restrooms at the Sponge Exchange.
This item we've discussed every year. It's a budgeted item, and it has to be brought forward to you in this form to approve the new contract for a year. So we're bringing it forward to you.
Anybody have any questions? Commissioner.
I know that we've brought this up several years in a row, and we've talked about reducing the funding or even stopping the funding. There are lots of restaurants that allow the public to use their restrooms and don't get any funding from the city. I understand the need for the restroom there, and I appreciate it, and I respect Mr. Pappas, but I'm just wondering if there's any way for the city, or does the city periodically check on those restrooms? I know I go in there and I see the same thing. So they do have a contract with us, and are they maintained? Are they kept clean? do we check on, to make sure that they're abiding by this contract?
Yes, we have been checking on and abiding, and plus I understand they've been in the process of talking about us. They're going to be doing some renovations there, including the restrooms, very soon. So we will be looking for that to come.
Because a lot of our visitors that probably use that restroom may think it's a city restroom, and that would be embarrassing. So I do hope that they do make a difference there. And my other question was, last year when we brought this up, I recommended that there be some signage out there saying public restrooms, and it's been a year, and there are still no signs. There is a sign on their board that has all of their businesses listed, and the men's restroom is included in that. But there is no public restroom sign, so if somebody didn't know where that restroom was, it would be hard to even find it.
Yeah, we can get that done because, as you know, the weather's holding out for us. We're getting all the amenities, the benches, all the stuff out there, and we can get that, make sure
Well,
that
I just requested
we can
that
make sure that
of,
signs up too.
Mr. Pappas last year, and
Okay.
it's been a year.
Okay,
Thank
we can do that.
Well, one of the things is I hope and I believe that they wanted to have the restrooms clean, and that, when they're not, that we can do something for is notifying them. Especially now, we're going to have a sign up there that says public restrooms, which means that it's the city's own. But also, I believe that, it's a reflection on them too. So I know that restrooms or any place, if it's used, sometimes, there's some things that happen that they have to just be able to go in and maintain it. So hopefully that's something that's done on a regular basis. Commissioner Tarpon?
Thank you. I just wanted to make a motion to approve and renew file number 120122-N-JJ.
Second.
Is there any public comments on this item?
Mayor, can I make a comment?
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I just wanted to state for the record, I know I said this a year ago, and I just, first of all, I appreciate the fact that it's on the agenda again. I think it's good for us to look at this item. I think it is appropriate for us to continue to subsidize these restrooms so that they are available for the public. I, for one, think that we should be lowering it to $5,000 a year as opposed to $7,500. And my rationale for that is simply that we've got the public restrooms that the city has built at the sponge docks, and I know in the downtown area, when we built our restrooms, we did discontinue subsidizing a private bathroom down there. So I just wanted to state for the record that I do think we should continue subsidizing these restrooms, but I would be in favor of lowering that figure to $5,000. Thank you.
Thank you. Was there any public comments? Roll call.
Commissioner Sieber,
Yes.
Commissioner Banther,
Yes.
Commissioner Terrapini?
Yes. Yes.
Vice Mayor Larson?
No?
Mayor Archie?
Yes. Item number 16, the request to sell administrative fine and lien, Bel Air Capital Group.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The requesting party in this administrative fine settlement is Bruce Danielson on behalf of the Bel Air Capital Group. You all have seen this request before. It came to you from the present owner of the property. Mr. Danielson and his group are the contract purchasers of these parcels located on Eunice Drive, Bayshore Drive, DeSoto Way, and Cadgeput Way, respectively. The violations at issue, the nature of them, and the associated costs are summarized for you in the report. In sum, pardon me, we have presently lien amounts in the amount of $604,032. We have a total amount settled to offer all those liens for $36,000. I don't recall precisely when it was, but this board previously offered $50,000. That offer was not accepted by the present owner of the property. Our administrative fine settlement policy permits others than the owner of the property to submit requests, and so Mr. Danielson has submitted the one you see before you tonight. I've recommended, as I did previously, that those fines be settled inclusively for the sum of $50,000. There is an additional condition in the report that does not typically appear in these types of recommendations, and that is to make the offer both contingent upon payment in 90 days and contingent upon closing on the property. And I have spoken with Mr. Danielson about those. though he does not agree with the recommended amount. He does agree that the recommendation should be contingent and the fine offer settlement should be contingent upon the closing of the properties. The backup material was rather lengthy and so it was not included in the paper packets, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you have about the request.
Well, first I just say that memory doesn't serve me well to even remember when we dealt with this before. But I do think that $50,000 for what's owed on this is way more than fair. It's not even 10%, you know, as far as getting back. So I would definitely not support lowering it, you know, to what they have offered us. So, any further discussion, Commissioner Seaver?
Yeah, I agree, Mayor. I think this is going on for 7 years, and the next one 12 years or something. Will our new chronic nuisance ordinance help with the timing of these liens? You know, because it has been going on a long time, and I also think that 50,000 is fair.
Now, these are presently in compliance. They have been for quite some time. I just want to make that clear.
Okay.
They have been. And again, this is these properties are the subject of a development agreement that this board has previously considered, and so that's why we're here at this point.
Any thought?
Question, Mayor?
Yes,
Just
sir.
for this might be a dumb question on the one on my part. So we're at the 50,000 mark, and that's the total amount offered to settle all liens was 36,000 plus our admin cost. Was that?
Yeah, under your policy, Commissioner, the applicant makes an offer, and the city attorney's office makes a recommendation based on the facts of the case. Now, sometimes that recommendation and the offer are coextensive, or at least pretty close to one another. In this circumstance, are a little bit off from one another. So this board is not bound by either one of them or by anything else. So the motion certainly could be to make a different offer than I've suggested, though I do very strongly urge you to make any settlement offer contingent upon the closing of the property within 90 days, of the properties, excuse me, within 90 days.
So their offer is?
Their offer is $36,000
Okay,
globally
gotcha.
for all of the parcels.
Okay, thank you.
Excuse me. So we're voting on 50,000 that you're recommending then?
You can vote on whatever motion is made. I recommended 50,000. Again, you're not obligated to accept my recommendation. That's just, it's mine based on the facts and circumstances of the case in conference with staff and the city manager.
Mr. Mayor,
Commissioner Tarpon?
I move to settle with, I move to split the difference in between 36,000 and 50,000 of a total of 41,000 with the terms and conditions spelled out by our counsel.
I second.
Roll call?
Commissioner Sieber,
Yes.
Commissioner Banther?
Yes.
Commissioner Terrapini?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Larson?
Yes.
Mayor Archie?
No. Item number 17 is authorization to file suit against John D. and Jacqueline, what's that, Zero?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You've received a memorandum from me dated September 25, 2015. This concerns a property located at 472 Penn Street. I've given you a detailed factual recitation of the facts, but in sum, this property has been a code enforcement problem since December of 2002. In those years, the property owners, unfortunately, for a variety of reasons, the validity of which is contested, have failed to bring the property into compliance. It is an eyesore. It is a problem property within the city. I won't comment again on the reasons as to how it got there, but that's where it is. We presently have a running code enforcement fine that is approaching $500,000. You have some limited options here to compel compliance, I am suggesting to you that the most effective way to gain compliance is to file suit for injunctive relief in the circuit court. The chronic nuisance ordinance that we've passed recently is not an effective mechanism to deal with this particular problem, based primarily on the age of the violations at issue. The property really sorely needs to be remediated. Code enforcement is here to address any specific questions you have about its condition, but as you can see, it's in it's in bad shape. We have gone down this road before. I don't want to call it a test case because I don't think that's a fair analysis, but we did a case like this recently on another property that was in very similar, in a similar factual circumstance as to its condition. We were able to have some success on that, and in order to remediate the property, I'm asking this board for permission to file a similar suit at 472 Penn Street. Happy to answer any questions that you have.
Any questions for the attorney? Commissioner Brown?
I mean, though I assume this is obvious, but all contact has been made with this owner to rectify the property. Even, I mean, I'm sure back in '02, but even present day, it's not just been racking up fines and nobody's been in communication.
Year after year after year.
Consistent contact?
Yes. If you remember the first case, we went after the worst house in the city. This is the second worst, and we wanted to get that resolved with that issue over by the Boys and Girls Club. This house, we have got numerous. We're going to do it. I mean, it's a constant
Have they given
process.
any kind of explanation, health, financial, or anything, or no?
Not done. You have?
Good evening. I'm Officer Gasson with the Police Department Code Enforcement. To answer your question, sir, looking back at the record when Officer Shively originally started the case back in 2002, he has notes in the record stating that originally they had some health problems. And the case was, as the city attorney advised, the case was originally postponed for almost a year to allow that to occur. And then it just continued, reading through the notes, to be one excuse after another once the health problems were taken care of. So 11 years ago there was a health problem, but as of recently there doesn't seem to be one noted in the record.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other? Chair will entertain a motion.
Move for approval.
Second.
Any public comments in this item? Roll call.
Commissioner Sieber,
Yes.
Commissioner Banther?
Yes.
Commissioner Terrapini?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Larson?
Yes.
Mayor Archie?
Yes. Item 18 is request to settle administrative fine on lien 514 South Cross Avenue.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Excuse me, we had another request to settle a code enforcement lien that arose, the property is at 514 South Gross Avenue. The requesting party is the bank that's foreclosed on the property and is presently in ownership and control of it. We have violations going back to November of 2002. We have accrued fines in a lien in the amount of roughly $170,000. Again, the property is homesteaded. We have an offer of $3,294 to settle that lien inclusively. I've made a recommendation based on the facts for a total settlement of $5,794, and that the owner be given 60 days to pay the settlement amount, at which time the fine will revert to its original amount. I believe that offer to be fair and reasonable under the circumstances of the case as I've described them for you in the report. Happy to answer any questions that you have.
Any questions for the attorney?
Move to settle for $5,000.
Second.
Any, well, actually, we don't need public comments, I forgot. Roll call.
Commissioner Sieber,
Yes.
Commissioner Banther?
Yes.
Commissioner Terrapini?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Larson?
Just for clarification, the motion was the same as the city attorney's recommendation?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Mayor Archie?
Yes. Next, we go to ordinance and resolution, item 19, resolution 2015-28, application 1561 in its point, site plan. This is quasi-judicial.
Mr. Mayor, the next four items on the agenda are quasi-judicial, so I would ask for those present and intending to testify tonight to listen closely to the quasi-judicial announcement, at which time we'll swear in speakers. The next 4 items on the agenda are quasi-judicial in nature. At such a proceeding, this commission acts in a quasi-judicial rather than legislative capacity. At such a hearing, it is not the commission's functions to make law, but rather to apply law that has already been established. In the hearing, the commission is required by law to make findings of fact based upon the evidence presented at the hearing and apply those findings to previously established criteria contained in the code in order to make a legal decision regarding the application. The commission can only consider evidence at this hearing that the law considers competent, substantial, and relevant to the issues. If that evidence demonstrates that the applicant has met the criteria established in the code, then the commission is required by law to find in favor of the applicant. By the same token, if that evidence demonstrates that the applicant has failed to meet the criteria established, then the commission is required by law to find against the applicant. There is an established procedure which will be followed at this hearing. All witnesses must give their testimony under oath. All persons testifying must give their name and address for the record. All testimony and questioning must address matters that are relevant and material to the issues under consideration. The city staff will present its testimony and evidence first. The applicant will then have an opportunity to cross-examine staff. The applicant will then present its witnesses and testimony, and city staff will have the opportunity to cross-examine the applicant's witnesses. Members of the public opposing the application will be given an opportunity to present testimony. After all members of the public speaking have concluded, members of the public in support will have the opportunity to speak. Each member of the public is limited to 4 minutes. The applicant will then be given an opportunity to make a closing argument or summary, after which staff will be given the same opportunity. Following this, the commission will consider the matter and vote. Commissioners may ask questions of witnesses. A motion will be made and a vote will be taken. At this point, I'd ask the members of the commission to disclose any ex parte communications on any of the next 4 applications before you tonight. Seeing none, I'd ask for all witnesses who plan to testify tonight to please stand and be sworn. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this proceeding is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
First item tonight is Resolution 2015-28, a resolution of the City of Tarpon Springs, Florida, approving application 15-61 for site plan approval for a 4-lot subdivision in the R100 district located at the north side of the terminus of Innes Drive, providing for findings, providing for conditions, and providing an effective date. It's Resolution 2015-28 by title only.
Good evening, Heather Erler for staff. This site plan approval for Innes Point has been requested by Doug Matthews as part of Riverside Combe LLC. It is again for an existing platted lot that will now be subdivided into 4 proposed lots. The property size is approximately 1.6 acres, more or less. It's located in, again, in the R100 district, and it has a future land use category of residential low. Subject property was platted back in 2002 and was developed with a home. The home was demolished in 2014, and the property is currently vacant with the exception of a covered boat slip. The site plan as set forth in the accompanying exhibits identifies the proposed 4-lot subdivision. The property is currently served by an existing paved private easement. The applicant has proposed to provide swailing around the perimeter of each lot to accommodate stormwater management. Since the roadway is existing, no further stormwater management is required for the roadway. The roadway will not be further improved as part of the subdivision. The Southwest Florida Water Management District has provided a letter of no objection to the applicant's proposed stormwater management proposal. The proposed subdivision will be connected to the city water and sewer, and the applicant will be installing a new water line and sewer line. Each lot will have grinder pumps, and the sewage will flow to a city-owned lift station at the intersection of Park Street and Innes Drive. The site plan shows sidewalks along the private easement, and a new gas line and reclaimed water line are proposed as well. The city has requested that the applicant submit the project estimated sanitary sewer flow for concurrency, the pump station information, as well as the wet well capacity system TDH and the pump information to include including the curve. The applicant is to provide details for a drop manhole where the force main will terminate in accordance with city specifications. Additionally, staff needs to have the contractor stub a 2-inch line to the north edge of Innis Drive to pick up the residents at 402 North Innis Drive, including a check valve and an isolation valve at the connection point with the valve and riser. The applicant will need to provide Florida Department of Environmental Protection application for approval prior to approval for the project permit for construction. With that, the application is sufficient. It does meet the basic criteria of the site plan regulations in the Land Development Code. However, staff does have a number of conditions, 11 conditions that will need to be met. I can read those into the record. The developer is responsible for acquiring all other jurisdictional permits or approvals and for meeting the minimum criteria of the Land Development Code, that the site plan as conditioned demonstrates the required facilities and services will be available at the prescribed level of service standards concurrent with the impact of the development and may, subject to Section 3 of this resolution, during the term of the site plan approval, receive a certificate of concurrency pursuant to Section 12200. If the easements are to be relocated, please provide letters of no objections from any utilities. If necessary, the developer will provide the city with all applicable easements. All utilities must be designed and approved by the City Utility Division. Submittal of the project estimated sanitary sewer flow for concurrency, pump station information to include wet well capacity, system TDH, and pump information to include the curve is required. Submittal of details for the drop manhole where the force main will terminate is required in accordance with city specifications. Developer will ensure that the contractor will stub out a 2-inch line to the north edge of the Innis Drive up to the residents of 402 Innis Drive, including a check valve and an isolation valve at the connection point with a valve riser. A condition is to be placed on the final plat stating no on-street parking will be allowed on the existing right-of-way. Construction plans shall be consistent with the approved site plan. The payment of all requisite fees attendant to the project shall be paid in accordance with the Land Development Code. And this site plan shall expire 1 year of the effective date unless an application has been filed for a building permit with construction plan signed and sealed by a registered engineer licensed in the state of Florida. And with that, this application was presented to the planning board, and the planning board, after due consideration and many questions of both staff and the applicant, did vote to approve it, and staff is recommending approval, and I can answer any questions that you may have.
Yeah, that was one of my questions. I see that they had 10 conditions that you included in what you just told us about.
Yes.
So, thank you.
This might just be something, but under the TRC, the comments for planning and zoning, it said deny, but I assume that was just deny, but then I guess further approved based off those recommendations.
That's correct, with the changes that they've proposed over the course of this project.
And they've met all those the requirements as far as, or
With
though agreeing to them, I should say.
With regard to everything except what we have conditioned. There are conditions in here for things that they have not met at this point with dealing with the utilities and that type of thing. But with the conditions, staff is confident that they will meet those conditions through the development process.
I'd rather there's going to be the some kind of parking rules in there as well.
Yeah, there will be required on their final plat. That's actually the fire department requested that so that they can be able to back the truck down the road because there's not sufficient area to turn most of the apparatus around. So they will have to reverse that vehicle. So because of that, they can't have parking along that roadway. Otherwise, they won't be able to get down there.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Does the applicant have questions for staff? Does the applicant wish to make a presentation? Any members of the public wishing to speak in opposition to the application? Any members of the public in support of the application? Closing from either staff or applicant?
I don't have a closing.
Mr. Mayor.
If there are no questions, Chair will entertain a motion.
Move approval.
Second.
Roll call.
Commissioner Sieber,
Yes.
Commissioner Banther?
Yes.
Commissioner Terrapini?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Larson?
Yes.
Mayor Archie?
Yes. Item number 20 is Resolution 2015-36, application 15-68, conditional use, Academy at the Beach.
Resolution 2015-36, a resolution of the City of Tarpon Springs, Florida, approving application 15-68, requesting a conditional use to allow operation of a private school on property located at 1200 South Pinellas Avenue, Suite 14, in the Neighborhood Business Zoning District, providing for findings, providing for conditions, and providing for an effective date. It's Resolution 2015-36 by title only.
Good evening, Heather Earler again for staff. Conditional use approval is for the operation of a private school in the Neighborhood Business District. The applicant is, in fact, the Academy of the Beach. The owner of the property is listed there as well. This is for a school of special education, and they've asked to come through the conditional use process so that they can run the school out of that facility, which is basically a medical complex. It has paramedical and medical uses in that property. However, it is zoned neighborhood business. Medical is allowed where schools of special education require this conditional use. They require us to look at compatibility and those type of things to make sure that the use is consistent with the uses that are currently in the property and with adjacent properties. So staff looked at that information, and the type of students that are coming to this property or will be coming to the school are developmentally disabled or delayed students. They are probably they're going to need more services than an education, a school of education the Pinellas County school system can offer, and because of that, they need a modified program. So this type of program kind of blends together academic achievement as well as developmental skills, and it provides for therapy if they need speech therapy or some of the other types of therapies so that they can overcome some of their disabilities. So that's really what the crux of what this property or this particular project will be providing for our community. So it's a different type of community. A school of special education is not considered a school of general education. It's defined differently in our land development code, and it's an important distinction because there is one particular business in the general area that does have alcohol. They have a beer and wine license to sell across the street at the gas station. Because this is a school of special education and not a school of general education, the restriction of being more than 200 feet between those businesses does not apply. So that's the only thing that's the only condition and concern that the planning staff would have is that location of a beer and wine license to operating any type of school here. But this particular type of school, because of the type of how specialized it is and the program is so specialized, and the applicant can speak a little bit more to that program if you have questions, there isn't that same concern that we would have with a general education school and children having ready access to alcohol, just across the street. That being the case, the use is compatible with the existing property, provided that we provide a couple of conditions, and those conditions are: there will be no activity associated with the school outside of the building without further review and approval by the city. This is like play areas and that type of thing. The parking lot is right there, right off the building. There's not really sufficient area to provide for a separate play area, so we would want to review anything that is going to go on outside that building for this program. The applicant is aware of that. Any further expansion of the private school will require further review of the approval by the city. That's if they want to go into additional units for the school. Now, they do have some associated medical program that they're doing out of one of the other units, but it's specifically for therapy. So they have folks coming in there that are providing therapeutic services, no different than a medical office. That's really not requiring a conditional use. It's just the school in this case. And then the final condition would be a building permit or approval of the city building department must be obtained for any changes or alterations made to the building. That should just make sure it's safe. If a building permit's required, we want to make sure that they're obtaining that building permit to keep the facility safe for these children that are going to be in there. So with that, the planning board did review this, and they had some questions. We had some very interesting conversation about security measures and those type of things, and the applicant was able to provide some additional information. And with that, staff is recommending approval, as did the planning board, and I'm here to answer any questions that you may have.
Was there any feedback from the businesses there as far as?
I got one letter from, which was not from a business owner, it was from somebody, it was an anonymous letter. And then the children provided you guys some letter in your backup as well about their school and their experience that they're having. So other than that, we have not received any other correspondence, no phone calls, nothing on this particular project with the exception of my correspondence with the applicant, so.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Tarpon.
Thank you. You mentioned the proximity to alcohol sales. Moving forward, is there anything to protect that business should they go out of, what is this, a gas station?
Yeah, it's the gas station across the street, and because this is not a school of general education, the prohibitions that are in the code for a school of general education would not apply. So their beer and alcohol license and any other that would come in the area would not be affected by this particular type of school.
Okay, so in the event that that business, because it's for sale. if
Correct.
there's
The
sell,
next person going
change
in there.
ownership, anything like that, they're not going to be prohibited to then alcohol.
As long as they come back through the process, if it's going into something different than what it currently is, and they can't just change the license over to a new owner, then they would have to come back through our conditional use process, which is an abbreviated process now, to get whatever license that they need, but they would not be prohibited by the school, by the proximity of this particular school.
Thank you.
No, I just want to say I think that this type of school would be very well appreciated and needed in our community.
This is more of a point of information. It says that Planning and Zoning Board approved it. I assume that when you put it like that, that's unanimous?
Yeah, it was a unanimous approval.
Okay. And if it's not, if you could just kind of note that.
I would be glad to do that for you in the future.
All right. Thank you.
Does the applicant have any questions for staff?
I do not have any questions. Do you have any questions for me?
Do you wish to make a presentation on it? If you'd like to make a presentation, I'd ask you to come approach the podium and state your name and address for the record.
See if I can get the microphone right this time. My name is Laura Kulikowski. I am the board president for Academy at the Beach. I live at 318 Ontario Avenue in Crystal Beach. We are very, very excited to be part of Tarpon Springs, and I don't have anything else to say other than we have a sea of blue and green and hope to continue to serve the citizens of Tarpon Springs and surrounding communities, but I'm here to answer any questions you might have regarding what we're doing and the excitement and energy that is coming from our school. Any questions?
I don't see it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Are there any members of the public wishing to speak in opposition to this application? Any members of the public wishing to speak in support of the application?
Anita Protas, 901 Bayshore Drive. When I heard about this school, and I am on the Planning and Zoning Board, I got very interested in this school. And in my investigation, and you all know how I go after things, it's very successful. And it's a needed school, and the sad part is this school and this lady has been conducting her business because a previous official in the city told them just to go ahead and do it. And after a year or so, they told her she needed to come back to the city to get approval. So it's really not her fault. It's the city's fault, because one of our past officials told her it was free and clear and to go ahead. And to take it away from her now shows shame on the city, because she's conducted herself accordingly and given the community something very good that's sorely needed in Tarpon Springs. And it's documented, and you can find out.
Hello, I'd like to support it. My name is Ian. The school has really helped me learn, helps me see the future of my life, and I hope you understand what it's like if you make us leave the school for good. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Chris Benson. My son Chase goes to the school. He has Down syndrome and autism.
I didn't ask him, but if you can give your name and address for the record. No, if you could go ahead and give your name, address for the record.
Oh, Christine Benson, 1100 Sunnydale Drive, Clearwater, Florida. My son Chase attends this school. He has Down syndrome and autism. The public schools could not provide the support he needed. We're taking advantage of the new PLSA scholarship to be able to come to this school. Is going to give him the tools he needs to be able to participate in society. It's going to be life-changing for him. Sorry. It's life-changing for him because she's taken the time to address his sensory needs and his skills with eating and with just being able to not throw stuff around so that he could participate in a classroom environment. And there's no other school that was even willing to take him because he's not potty trained. And they didn't even blink at that. They see it as a challenge and something that they're going to help. And you cannot take this school away from him because no one else wants him. Thank you.
My name is Melissa Murphy. I live at 9811 Sweet Bay Court, Newport Richey, Florida. I am a teacher at this school. I work with the older students. I have a 3rd, 5th, 6th, and 8th, and a 9th grader. And I also work with the little ones. And taking this school away from them would just be terrible. Like, it's been the best thing I've ever done for these children. I am a licensed teacher. I'm finishing my degree. And I've worked in the public schools, and just going to this school and seeing these kids grow and for them to be able to get up there. Like, that was one of my students who got up there. And to say that he's really liking school and enjoying it, coming to this school just really melts my heart for him to be able to come up here and speak to you guys. Thank you.
Staff wish to make a closing argument summary?
No, I do not.
Applicant wish to make a closing summary? Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. As look to entertain a motion, I just say that I don't know where it came that this commission wanted to take away the school, because that's not what even that we're here for. But is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Roll call.
Commissioner Sieber,
Yes.
Commissioner Banther?
Yes.
Commissioner Terrapini?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Larson?
Yes.
Mayor Archie?
Yes. The next item that we have is item 21, ordinance 2015-19, application 1574, 400 Pine Trail Village right-of-way vacation. First reading.
Ordinance 2015-19, an ordinance of the City of Tarpon Springs, Florida, vacating and abandoning right-of-way for an approximately 640-square-foot portion of an alleyway on the south boundary of Pine Trail Village, located at 400 Pine Trail Village, adjacent to North Safford Avenue, providing for conditions, providing for findings, providing for recordation of the public records of Pinellas County, and providing for an effective date. That is the first reading of ordinance 2015-19 by title only. The second reading will be held on October 20, 2015. The ordinance will be published in the Tampa Bay Times by title only on October 9, 2015.
Good evening, Heather for staff. The vacate is to vacate a 640-square-foot portion of an alleyway along the southern boundary of North Pine Trail, adjacent to North Safford Avenue. And this is actually, if you're familiar with Ring Avenue and the Ring Avenue Village and also the Pine Trail Village, they actually are adjacent to each other, even though you can't really access it. There's a small alleyway that between. They're looking to close off that alleyway in this portion. On the other side, there's actually a single-family residence that abuts this residential or this alleyway. That portion that was abutting the adjacent residence will not be affected. It's only the small portion between the Ring Avenue property and the Pine Trail Village property. That's why it's such a small square footage. Technical Review Committee has reviewed this application and has no objections to the proposed vacate. The portion of the alleyway to be vacated does not contain any municipal utilities, and the city has further determined that the right-of-way is not needed for any further municipal utilities proposed. The city has adequate rights-of-way in the area and in the form of streets of alleys and future utility needs to meet our future utility needs. A letter of no objection from each of the utility provider has been received for this application or this vacation request. The property proposed for vacation does not provide access to any adjoining property. The property is not needed to implement any circulation plans that the city may have. And the property does not currently provide the neighborhood with a usable access, because you can't just drive through because of the way the actual fence lines are for the existing villages. You can't just drive right through to Safford. So it's really not an improved alleyway at this point. With that, staff has provided the evaluation for the right-of-way to the applicant. They are aware of that cost. It's also in your backup here. And staff is recommending approval of this vacation with no conditions in this particular case, and I can answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions, Mr. Erwiller? Chair will entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any public comments on this item? Roll call.
Commissioner Sieber,
Yes.
Commissioner Banther?
Yes.
Commissioner Terrapini?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Larson?
Yes.
Mayor Archie?
Yes. Item number 22, ordinance 2015-20, applications 1573, 200 Lemon Street, right-of-way vacation.
Ordinance 2015-20, an ordinance to the City of Tarpon Springs, Florida, vacating and abandoning right-of-way for an approximately 2,921 square foot portion of an alleyway internal to Lemon Village located at 200 East Lemon Street adjacent to Boyer Street, providing for conditions, providing for findings, providing for future easement, providing for recordation of the public records of Pinellas County, and providing for an effective date. This first reading of ordinance 2015-20 by title only. Second reading will be held on October 20, 2015, and will be published in the Tampa Bay Times by title only on October 9, 2015.
Okay, again, Heather for the record. This vacate, again, is for a 2,900 square foot portion of actually two internal alleyways. And the applicant is requesting to vacate a portion of these alleyways within the Athens subdivision. The portion of the vacation is adjacent to Boyer Street. It's internal to actual Lemon Village. There is an adjacent property on the entryway portion. There is an adjacent property owner. They have been notified. However, they did not choose to be part of this application. So we're only vacating one side of that particular easement will actually go to the Housing Authority. The other one will actually remain in our ownership going forward for now until that applicant comes forward if they choose to come forward. With that, the portion of the right-of-way to be vacated does contain municipal utilities. The applicant has agreed to provide an easement to the city. The easement will be recorded will be recorded after the second reading of Ordinance 1520, and the city has adequate rights-of-way in the area in the form of streets and alleyways for any other future utilities. We don't need to have this particular alleyway for any future needs. We just need to be able to maintain the facilities that we have there and upgrade them as necessary. A letter of no objection was received from each of the area utility providers for this vacation request, and the applicant has agreed to provide Verizon with a requested easement for utilities. The property proposed for vacation does not provide access to any adjoining property, and the property is not needed to implement future circulation plans for the city. The property is not needed to implement future circulation plans for the transportation element of the comprehensive plan. And this property does not provide adjoining neighbors with a viable usable access or vistas to the shoreline. There are two conditions the staff is recommending on this particular application. An easement shall be granted to Verizon Florida LLC to allow for the maintenance and operation of communication facilities on the Lemon Village property, and an easement shall be granted to the City of Tarpon Springs to allow for maintenance and operation of city-owned water and wastewater on the Lemon Village property. Again, the evaluation for this particular property has been done. The applicant has been made aware of it. They will need to pay those fees prior to second reading. And with that, staff is recommending approval with the two conditions as stated.
Any questions? Commissioner Tarpon?
Thank you. What is the purpose of what's the applicant's intended use of the portion of the vacated right-of-way?
Well, right now in this particular piece, there is a encroachment into the buildings when they were built, didn't really respect the space that was there in the existing alleyways. So because of that, they're kind of adjoining, they're encroaching into those alleyways. You could never really use them as drive alleyways or that type of thing. Right now, the applicant's in the process with a very large grant of updating all of the four villages and going through and renovating, adding new dumpster locations, changing the parking to provide for better handicap accessibility. They're actually renovating the units. They're adding landscaping. So these particular internal alleyways are necessary to be part of that larger plan for Lemon Village to make the circulation work with this new parking arrangement that they're trying to accomplish.
Any additional questions? If not, Chair will entertain a motion.
Move for approval.
Second.
Any public comments on this item? Roll call.
Commissioner Seaver?
Yes.
Commissioner Banther?
Yes.
Commissioner Terrapini?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Larson?
Yes.
Mayor Archie?
Yes. The next item we have is item number 23, under miscellaneous, and this is discussion of Florida Hospital emergency room funding. City Manager.
Yes, this was asked to be put on the agenda by Commissioner Banther to get a feel of the meetings that all of us have had with the hospital about the request. All I want to say about the backup, I put together a backup. I've explained my position as a steward of your budget in running the city. I've also given you some alternatives after talking with some of you to find some alternatives, made some suggestions, gave you some examples and the financial ramifications of those examples. So pretty much I wanted to give you the summary of what all of us has talked about, and of course the only place you can collectively talk about it is with the sunshine law is in an open meeting, so that was the purpose of Commissioner Banther put it on, and I'll turn it over to him.
Oh, thank you. Again, I wanted to have us talk as a board about what we all thought of this. I'll just start off if I can, Mayor. That's fine.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I just overall, in thinking about the importance of healthcare in our community, it's why people move to a certain place. It's why they stay, and it definitely is part of the whole full-service city model. People want to have a hospital, which we do have one here. That is great. That they can go to, and we all know from various experiences of ourselves and loved ones. I had one yesterday. When you go to the ER, the service you receive is great, but it is in desperate need to be redone, as we've seen before here. I think about a year ago, and it's only serving twice the amount of people that it was built to serve. And I know the hospital has met with us individually about different ways the city could help with the funding of that expansion. Of course, in a perfect world, when we had the discussion of forgiving the lease, which would have to go to the ballot, that if we could do that, if we had the money to do that as a city, that would be great. But we're not in that situation right now, as far as I see it. The fact that we're still using the reserves to balance our budget, we're just not there. In the future, possibly, but I don't see that there, and I couldn't, in good faith, vote for that, knowing we would lose those funds. However, I still think that the city commissioner, that the city manager has found some good ways that we as a city can contribute to an ER. That is a city-owned building. I want to make sure that's clear to people that might not realize that's not just a building that they own and we're going to give them money towards their own building. That is a city-owned building. So it'd be similar as if you have a tenant and you agree that they're going to do X amount of work and you're going to do X amount of work, but it's still your building in the end of the day. So that's important as well. And I like the scenarios, Mark, that you provided where it would be a line item in our budget for $2, $3, and $4 million. If I'm correct, Mark, that would not have to go to ballot, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And while I know that's not meeting the immediate demands of forgiving the lease, it is, as a board, if we decided that, and if we decided that was the right way to go, and then we decided which tier, 2, 3, or 4 million to actually fund, that would be a commitment on our part, kind of a goal, and then each year we'd have that, as is laid out here, a number in the city's budget that we'd give each year to the hospital. And if I understand it, Mark, correctly from our convo, that they wouldn't get those monies until the plans were CO'd, correct?
That would be my recommendation.
Okay, I know you recommended that. So it wouldn't be just automatic. It'd be once the construction, I guess, starts or the actual plans are approved. So I think that provides the city with several different options. It doesn't tie us down if we forgive the lease and then it goes to the ballot and then the citizens, approve that, and then 5 years from now we have another tank in the economy and we need those funds. We don't have that situation here. By a majority vote, we can raise the amount that we're giving each year if our coffers are full and we're not having to use the reserves to balance our budget, or we can give less if we absolutely had to, if we were desperate. So I think it's good, but overall, I think the actual the more important thing here is to decide, if any, what as a board are we going to say that we're committing to this expansion of the ER, again, a building that we own and that is providing vital services to the citizens here. And I just like the idea of the line item in the budget, just because all the flexibility it provides. And so I'm anxious to hear the thoughts of my colleagues here, and if any of my colleagues are leaning towards the option where it's a line item in the budget, kind of which tier would you fall into? So I'm anxious to hear everyone's thoughts.
Thank you. First, I thank Commissioner Banther for placing this on the agenda. It's certainly something that's been on everyone's mind for some period of time. And I did have the opportunity to meet with Mr. Bergherm, and I appreciated the presentation. I definitely appreciate the need to improve the emergency room at the hospital, to expand the overall ER capacity, to improve the ambulance access, to improve the privacy capabilities. I get it. I think it's definitely a needed improvement for our emergency room. When you talk about how the city could potentially help, and we look at whether or not we could eliminate the lease or make changes to the lease, or if there's some kind of a yearly contribution we would make, and we talk about the contribution eventually achieving $2 or $3 or $4 million, the question that I would have, and I'm not sure what the answer is, but the question that I would have is, what are we cutting from the budget in order to accomplish that contribution, or how much are we raising taxes in order to reach that contribution? Because as Commissioner Banther mentioned, we're currently pulling money from reserves in order to meet our current budget. Earlier this evening, I asked whether or not we could lower a subsidized bathroom. We're paying $7,500 to subsidize a bathroom at the Sponge Docks, and I wondered if we could lower that to $5,000, and I wasn't able to get support on that. That would cut $2,500 from the budget, and we're talking now about whether or not we can find a way to eventually raise $2 or $3 or $4 million to help out the hospital. Is it a good cause? Absolutely. Is it something that I support in terms of, do I want to be partners with the hospital and support the hospital? Absolutely. But I'm not sure where we find that money. I'm not sure what we cut, or I'm not sure how much we raise taxes to do it. And until we have answers to those questions, I find it very difficult to move forward. Those are my questions or comments at this time.
Thank you. I certainly appreciate Commissioner Banther putting this item on the agenda, and I share a lot of the same thoughts and feelings that you have towards the hospital in terms of it being one of the major assets in our community, and certainly for a full-service community and attracting more business and industry and residents. It's something that's very important. I feel like I've always supported the hospital through the name change, through the discussions with CARE-ATC. Those were something that I always stood behind the hospital. I still stand behind the hospital. That said, I share the same concerns as Commissioner Larson and the city manager. So for me, I was the liaison to the board for the hospital in terms of the discussions with the ER. The discussions that I was privy to, that I sat in, discussed a magnitude of things. One was, potentially a $30 million facility, and then it got reduced to a $16 million facility. So there's without a doubt a need to have a new ER facility. And at the end of the day, I think it's important for all of the residents to understand that the community, the city, the residents own the facility of the hospital. So any improvements that are made to the hospital or that have already been made to the hospital stay with the community. So for me, that's something that ultimately has to always be remembered and recognized. So whatever this commission, if we decide to do anything in terms of a contribution, whatever it may be, let's say the new ER is a $16 million facility and the city contributes $2 to $3 million. Well, at the end of the day, at the end of the lease, we still have a $16 million facility minus depreciable value. So, to me, that's something that I think is important for us to consider and to remember that, at the end of the day, whatever the new facility is, that's our facility. That stays within the community. So, that's something that I think is important to stay in the forefront of our minds. To address somewhat of the white elephant in the room in terms of how my thinking, which is something that I've said directly to Mr. Burgum's face, so I don't have any problem to say it again, is the new Palm Harbor facility and what that kind of did to my mindset. And I understand that it's an issue of market share and trying to capture the market share. I can appreciate all of that. I respect all of that. But in my opinion, we've talked about an ER facility in the city of Tarpon Springs for 2 years, but in a matter of X amount of months, the trigger was pulled on a $3.5 million site in Palm Harbor. So that, to me, that market share was put ahead of our market share in terms of the hometown, which is upsetting to me. It was touted that facility will become property of the city. So at a certain point, I'd like to know whether or not that is true and how that's memorialized, if it will in fact become property of the city. And if it does become property of the city, at the end of the lease, when the city would potentially own it, what protects us from the potential debt-to-equity ratio there? What's to say that the debt is not more than the equity there? And then at that case, in those terms, is the city responsible or liable for that? So that's just something that I want to be addressed, that's all. I mean, if it is in fact property of the city and it becomes our property, then it's an asset to us, and I think that's great. I think the city manager did a lot of good in terms of strategically looking at this and trying to determine a way to contribute to the ER, because I think that's important, and I do think the city should be able to do that. I do think that whatever we do in terms of a contribution, I would like for that to still go to referendum. I don't think that that's appropriate for this board to try and sidestep that. I think the people should ultimately have the right to weigh in on that. And personally, I think that the option that I favor most would be the option to freeze the lease payment in one form or another. My understanding is that every year the lease payment escalates. So I do appreciate and like that scenario that you've put together for us, Mark, whatever the case may be, whether we freeze it at its current value and the monies that would have been escalated in the terms of the 24 or 25 years, that's our contribution. I can appreciate that. Or if we decide to ultimately reduce it by a little bit and freeze it at that number, I think that that's also a worthy scenario. But I do think it should still go to referendum. So, at this point, those are my thoughts. However, I will say it's hard for me to justify or say, okay, this is what we're going to do, this is what we're going to contribute, without having seen a more of a finalized presentation in terms of what the new ER facility will be. It's hard for me to say, okay, we're going to contribute $2 or $3 million without knowing that this is the ER facility that the hospital is going to build. And I certainly would say that nothing against the hospital. You've done everything that you said that you were going to do. You've put millions and millions of dollars into our facility, which will remain our facility. I appreciate all of that. But at the end of the day, I don't want us to contribute hard money until the facility, the ER facility, has been built. We can memorialize it and say that we are going to contribute, but I don't want us to actually contribute until the facility is built. We've been down that road. We're still going down that road in other developments that some of us were maybe part of, some of us weren't, and I think that that's something that's very important to keep in the forefront of your mind. Thank you.
Commissioner Saber.
Thank you. I also appreciate Florida Hospital and know you're a big part of our community, and thank you for all that you do. I do have a couple of questions as far as the hospital goes. In your experience with other communities that your hospitals have leases with, do we have any information on what your experience is and how much you pay on in certain communities as opposed to others? If you could give us that kind of information so we can maybe look at how we compare. And also, when the hospitals do make improvements, do these properties give you credits towards your lease or any type of adjustment like you're asking us to do? So those were two questions that I had. I also agree with Commissioner Larson. We are still in the red, and it's hard to think of giving up any kind of funding without increasing our millage rate. We have to, our responsibility to our residents, and I'm sure that we have to think about the millage rate and increasing that if we, do have to do any type of additional funding. I agree with Commissioner Tarapani that maybe freezing it would be an option in one of these charts here. But I think we need further discussion before we make a decision.
Thank you. I guess, thank Commissioner Bamford. One of the things is now is that we all kind of know what everybody's thinking. Because of sunshine, we haven't been able to talk with each other. The hospital has been able to talk with all of us, so they have an idea of what we've been thinking, but we didn't have an idea of what each other was thinking. One of the things is that as I've shared with the hospital, and I share now, is I think that we've always had a partnership with the hospital. It's always been that. A lot know the history from Tarpon Hospital to Helen Ellis, some other affiliations to where we're at today. And I say I appreciate a lot of the things that the hospital has been able to accomplish now. We know that once we was definitely in the red. We didn't know whether we'd even be here today, but through the efforts that's happened, one of the things that I was asked, and I know there's some questions as it relates to the hospital and the experiences with leases and credits and those type of things, and Commissioner Tarpani had some additional questions they had asked, and I'll ask you in terms of having the opportunity to talk about these things in a public setting, which all of us can participate in as far as a workshop. I think that a workshop not only helps them in not having to just shoot from the hip tonight, it helps us. There are some things that I like to know as from our finance director in terms of what happens in terms of freezing the lease. I know the city manager has done a great job with finance in terms of putting some things together. I know there's some anxiety in relationship to what this means in terms of final budgets as we move forward. My thoughts is that we need that type of information if we're going to make an intelligent and prudent decision. I've shared privately, and I say publicly, that I understand what the hospital did as far as looking at market shares, Russell, that in terms of Palm Harbor, but it still brings some doubt and anxiety to everybody's mind. I don't think it was a matter of them saying that the emergency room is not important. Anybody that's ever been to that emergency room at all know the importance of doing renovation there. That's without a doubt. There, from a standpoint of getting ambulances in and out, and when you hear about not being able to take any more people there, and you have to bypass that hospital to get to another hospital, I don't think any of us want to be in that position and want to put our residents in that position. But in order for, I look at it, and I look at it in a matter of fairness in terms of them. I would think that we would want to discuss some of these things. We want to give them opportunities to research and see, about what happens with the lease. We would want to try to figure out from our perspective, because to me, it's, when we talk about freezing the lease and the rest of that, what is the impact? And I know that the city manager, I believe this, that he wouldn't give us numbers that he didn't think that he could meet, but as we look at that, nobody knows what the future entails either. And there's a responsibility I share with the hospital. So I'm like Commissioner Tarpon, whatever I talk about privately is what I talk about publicly. My responsibility is to the citizens of Tarpon Springs, first and foremost, and I believe in doing that, I should be concerned about the welfare of the hospital. I should be concerned about what happens at the hospital, how can we help the hospital to improve so that the citizens of Tarpon can get better health care. But by the same token, what some might know that's sitting out in the audience and what some might not know is that part of our general fund comes from payments that we get from the hospital, which is what Vice Mayor talked about. So we have to be concerned from a business perspective of how do we do that? Do I think that we should bear some of the costs of what's happening out there? I believe that's in the best interest of the citizens of Tarpon that we do that. What that price is, I think that's when we are talking to our finance people about trying to look and be available for us to ask those type of questions. I think that right now we all have some idea of what everybody's thinking. We haven't come to any conclusion as to what that dollar factor would be. And I think that those are the type of things that we can work out when we have a little time to get some of the questions that's on the table answered fully. And that's for the hospital if they want to make a presentation in terms of their need, answer the questions that we might have, as well as get the questions that I would need in terms of from finance. So that's where I'm kind of at. So I don't know whether anybody have any heartburn or gripes with looking at a public workshop in terms of this item.
No, I don't have heartburn or gripe about that. I think that's a good idea. No, I wanted to make 3 additional questions or requests that would be related to a work session. One, I would like to ask if we could have this item go before our Budget Advisory Board in some way, shape, or form. I think this is certainly relevant for what they do.
It'll be on the agenda for the 15th.
Perfect. I'd like, if possible, to get a opinion from our city attorney in regards to the ownership of the Palm Harbor property. It's been mentioned that would revert back to the city, and I'd like to get more information on that. I don't know if you're prepared to answer that tonight.
He can get it to you now.
Yeah, that's not the case. And I've spoken with the hospital's attorney about that. That is not the case. There's no reversion on a separate property that is not that property. There's no reversionary interest in the new facility at all. The city has no rights and no duties, no obligations relative to that property.
So the city has no rights nor any liabilities related to that property?
Correct.
Okay. And then also in regards to a future workshop session, if we could get future budget projections with some of these different scenarios. I know that we've been getting these different projections on when we would be able to discontinue taking money from reserves to balance, or from the unassigned fund to balance our budget. So I guess my question would be, if we were to freeze the lease payment, how would that, what would the ramifications be for our own budget? Thank you.
Mr. Bradford?
Yes, just one question I would want to see from our finance manager is, regardless if we choose one of the tiered amounts in the budget, or if we froze the lease, some estimate, and it's, there's a ton out there, what the future value of that money will be. $150,000 today is a lot different than $150,000 20 years from now, and we tend to always think in today's dollars. So some kind of almost a school lesson on that of what if we, whatever, because I think that would apply no matter what scenario we choose, if we choose any at all. Because, again, if we froze the lease, you know, $50,000 hits a lot harder now than it does 20 years from now. So some kind of education on that as far as the best he can, as far as how that would affect us.
Well, one of the things is and I don't know whether y'all have some more comments before I go to public comments, is that Commissioner Tarpon talked about something as far as, you know, what happens in the end as far as it being debt to us, which now is not ours, is to the thought of, you know, I would assume, since that's what I was told, you was told, that the intention was that it would be ours, but I don't know whether we want it now, you know, and that's something that we need to think about in terms of that and moving forward. You know, whether we would like to have it as a part of the lease, and I say the intentions because, you know, I assume that was said to you and me and anybody else by mistake. So those are things that we need to think about while we have an opportunity in terms of moving forward, you know, and to, I don't know what date that we will look at, but we'll look to you to try to figure that out with the hospital in terms of having that type of workshop. But what I do now is I go to any type of public comments that's on this item. If you come and have a comment, state your name, address, and we ask that you limit your comments to 4 minutes.
Good evening, Mike Kuskudis, 623 East Tarpon Avenue. Most of you know that I'm very involved with the hospital. I'm actually vice chair of the operating board. I'm also sit on the foundation. I want to thank this commission and the city manager for taking this matter up. It's real important. It's important to the health care of this community. I think it's important to maintaining the gem of the hospital, North Florida, here in Tarpon Springs. And I can address every issue that you brought up, but I know that's not the forum for today. But in any event, I think we can address whatever questions you have to the positive, to address, you know, Mr. Tarapani, the need or the necessity to do what they did. And I think, again, that will be for a later discussion. You know, one of the things, and I've said this to each of you privately, I've never said it publicly, but I will say this publicly. Before Adventist Health Systems took over our hospital, that hospital was close to closing. We would have not had a viable healthcare facility in this community. I don't know any healthcare organization that would have picked up the tab and come into Tarpon Springs. When I met with Mike Schultz, which is Bruce's boss, went to lunch with him, and he committed to me. He said, Mike, this is going to be tough. This is real tough. I will tell you this, as an organization, as a company, I give you my word that we will commit to this community. We'll do whatever it takes to make this hospital viable. And they have. But he also said it also takes the community. It's just not us. It's got to be a partnership. So we will be looking to this commission or the community to be the partner that it needs to be to make sure that we have a viable hospital in this community. I've had the fortune or misfortune of having to run up to Gainesville this morning because my son was in the emergency room. So I know the critical need for having good emergency services in your community. Thank you.
Anyone that would like to speak, we ask you to come forward so we don't have that mad rush.
Chris Palaidis, 1397 Greenleaf Court. The needs of our communities and the needs of our neighbors communities, Holiday, Pearl Harbor, Crystal Beach, parts of East Lake, have grown the last few years in large numbers. And as we grow, we need our hospital to expand and to get better, so cover the needs of our communities. The reason or the benefits for our hospital for this expansion, for the emergency expansion program is, first, we're going to get a lot more patients for the new emergency room. I see some of you in a way objecting because the question comes up, what happens if where the building is going to belong, to who they belong, and you getting a lot of references for the building that we build a clinic in Holiday, and this now stay there empty. But the benefits for our benefits, the main benefits is we're going to get more patients. And by the way, I commend the CEO and President Bruce for building that in Pearl Harbor, because if we don't, then Mies or Morton, they're going to do that and they take the patients. And the second benefits for our hospital is we're going to have a renovated, a modernized emergency room with 18 beds. The MRI is going to be new relocation, and we're going to have a brand new building. But looking at the history, since 2010, October 2010, when the Adventist health system took over the hospital, they perform with class and respect to our community, starting with the name. And then in 2011, they have a new president and CEO, Bruce Berkham, took over. And since then, they spent over $50 million for our hospital. The hospital look like now like day and night. And as Michael mentioned earlier, that our hospital was down the pits back then, and now it's look completely different physically inside and out. The medical employment, the volunteers, everywhere you look improvement, close to the perfection. And actually even the cafeteria, because all of us usually have a tendency to criticize the hospital food. The last few years I don't have any criticism for the food that they do in the cafeteria, the hospital food for the patients. And another benefit to us for the hospital is not like the most of the hospitals. They got involved in our community through the outreach program. They educate our citizens about the programs they have, different programs. Today I was looking at the flyer, have something about free Medicaid seminar for retirees. They have different for the families, completely different on every department. And then they got involved with the Rotary. I see them at the triathlon. I see employees. I see supporting it. They took with our Epiphany celebration. They helping. And they got involved with Thanksgiving basket, Christmas basket. In one of these events, I see Bruce over there packing up the food, the turkeys. And wherever you see it, they are there. For that reason, I myself, and I discussed with a lot of citizens, they support us, they support, and I bring to you the message for us to support the hospital, because the money is going to come back to us. And we're going to have a better hospital, and it's going to take better the needs of our citizens. And the other thing is that the old saying...
Excuse me for a second. Bell is going off. If you could wrap that up for us, we'd definitely appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm finishing up.
Thank you, sir.
I'm doing close 2 minutes.
It's already going off.
Oh, okay then. I'm sorry. You hear the old saying, take two people to dance the tango. It's the hospital, and now our citizens and us to help the hospital be one of the best hospitals around here. And I bring an analogy to all of you. About 10 days ago, I was on the news, 25 miles from here, a city called Tampa, where is Tampa Bay Bucks. the Klesier family. Is going to spend 75 millions to renovate the stadium, and the city of Tampa is going to give 25 millions. So we are close to a similar situation. So I'm going to say the old saying that it takes a village. For us, it takes a village for all of us to help the hospital to become a better hospital for our citizens. Thank you.
Dan Richardson, 68 North Canal Drive, Palm Harbor. I'm the chair of the Helen Ellis Memorial Foundation. As you know, our main purpose in life is to help and support the hospital. What I hear today is all of you support the hospital and want to try to find a way to partner. Let's have that workshop. We'll answer the questions you have. You'll answer the questions we have. We'll come to a number that works for us and ones that works for you, and then we'll bring it back in the form of a recommendation or a request. At this point, just agree to the workshop. That's all we can ask.
Hello, Bruce Burgum, 1649 Seabreeze, Tarpon Springs. So I have the privilege to be the CEO and Chief Executive Officer of the hospital. And I just want to thank each and every one of you. I appreciate the good questions that you've raised. I know, similar to what Michael said, we could answer all of those questions to you. It's probably not the right forum at this point. Just one, I will answer one question. There is no debt associated with the Palm Harbor project, but we would welcome the opportunity to sit in a workshop forum with all of you and answer all those questions. And I think that you will see the merits of the project. We've seen since 2011 the volume at the ER has gone from 16,000 visits. This year we're going to finish at 26,000 visits. Each of you know that the ER needs some changes, some cosmetic changes, and some expansion of space there too, so that we can continue to serve not only this community but the people that come into Tarpon Springs to seek their care there. So thank you so much for the opportunity to bring this up, Commissioner Banther. I appreciate it. Commissioner Townsend, I appreciate working with you. Each and every one of you have been very receptive to meeting with us individually, and I think that if we could get together in a structured form, we could answer all of your questions and reach a happy agreement there. So thank you very much.
My name is Naomi Patterson, and I should say that my address is 1395 South Pinellas. That's the hospital. But I live at 809 Goff Road. That's where I sleep. I'm up here to tell you that I have traveled all over the United States, and I made it my business to visit one hospital everywhere I went and check out first the cardiac unit, because that's my passion. But I also check the emergency rooms. It is so important. Y'all have no idea how important it is to have a well-equipped emergency room, have the room separate, privacy. It's so important because that's where it all begins. That's what keeps the hospital open. That's what keeps the hospital going. It is the nucleus. It's the beginning of everything is the emergency room. And it's very important that we have well-paid nurses, all of the equipment that we need, and all of you to vote for it. Thank you.
My name is Gary Aviller. I'm the Director of Pharmacy at the hospital. I'm also a member of the Board of Directors of the Foundation. I came to work at the hospital approximately 8 years ago. Could have retired around 4 years ago when the Adventist took over the hospital. I've been around. I've been doing this for close to 40 years, and in 40 years I've seen a lot of amazing things in healthcare. What happened to this hospital over the last 4 years is about as big a miracle as I've ever seen. When the Adventists took over, they provided that hospital with a purpose and a soul and a direction. And it's incumbent upon you to do whatever it is that you can do to allow this hospital to continue on its course to provide your citizens with the health care that they deserve and that they need going forward. I've never seen anything like it in my experience, and quite honestly, it's the only reason I'm still working there today, is because I've come to love the place and can't imagine letting go until I see it go through. So thank you very much for all you can do in the future to make this happen. Thank you.
There are no other public comments. I don't know whether Commission have any additional questions, but we know we always have the opportunity to talk to the city manager in relationship to those. I don't know if you have any closing.
Just that, especially since the referendum is still under consideration and some of the thoughts here, in the timeline, we've got 2 open Tuesdays. Of course, the first one's in a week. The other one is the 27th of October. I don't see us going past the 27th of October for this work session, so that would be the last available Tuesday. So I would suggest, if it's a work session, that we need to take advantage of that open meeting on the 27th for that work session.
I would even say, because it is a little bit of a time crunch, I think that we should try and potentially consider, if permissible in everybody's schedule, maybe even a Wednesday if the 27th doesn't work, if we could try and meet prior to that. And I would also mention to the hospital, if you have the plans or you're still considering the plans for one aspect of the ER, if you bring those to the work session, that would also be helpful, I think.
I could, the 21st or either proposed is fine.
You say
I can. Well, we heard the 20. What was it? 28, 27th.
We got 2 off to 27th is the.
Okay, that's fine. Or what Commissioner Tarpon said of the. Was it the 21st, the Wednesday?
Is anybody got a problem with the 21st?
No, the 21st is good for me.
Or the 27th. What I would suggest is that, I don't know how much time the hospital, maybe they're ready tomorrow to present, and how much time we need, but they kind of work that out. We do it on either one of those days if that's
Ready when you are.
possible, so if
21st?
If 21st is, everybody's ready, we do it then. If they're not, we'll do it on 27th,
21st.
Okay.
All right.
That's it.
Jeff?
I'll just say, the hospital said the 27th would be better for them. So, I'm good with either.
That is our, when we
That's
have.
a date that we already have set. All Tuesdays.
When Anita yells at me about not having work sessions, that would be the normal work session date and stuff. So.
Well, we'll be having this in her honor.
Okay.
And I'll say as we close is that, a couple times mentioned in terms of what the inventors have done. I don't think that anyone on this commission has any doubts about what has happened at the hospital and how they've transformed some things. The other thing is, I don't think anybody up here have any doubts as far as the need for emergency room. Everything else is kind of up in the air there, And I think that, in my mind, that's what we are elected to do. And same way as I share with Mr. Bergman and the rest of them, I don't have a problem with what they did in Palm Harbor, because I know they made a business decision based upon the information that they had at hand. And I just say that we want to have the same opportunity to make a business decision on behalf of the citizens of Tarpon. It has nothing to do with whether we support the ER or whether we support the hospital. It's having time to make an adequate decision on something that's going to affect everybody in this town, not only for as health care is concerned, but if we don't make the right decision, it affects you in some other ways. So that's where we're at, and I thank everybody for coming out, because that lets me know that people are concerned about what happens at the hospital, and we are too. So with that, this was our last agenda item, so this was concluded, and we'll go to the, what is it now? Is it major? Major. I would never call you that, sir. I started to call you chief. No, but Mr. Attorney?
Comments?
City Manager?
No, sir.
Madam Clerk? Commissioner Bampton?
No comments.
Vice Mayor?
No comments.
Commissioner Tarpon?
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Sieber?
I just want to invite everybody to Oktoberfest, the 15th through the 18th of this month.
And I don't have any comments, and we'll adjourn this meeting at 8:15.
See you in 2 weeks, Vice Mayor?
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah. What?